Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Streaming Charts with Dan. It's been a while since I did an episode. It seemed like every time I had one planned, something came up or a news story broke or I just wasn't able to do it that week. So we actually have a couple of months worth of stuff to go through for Netflix and Nielsen and everything else. So we're just going to jump right into the data itself. And as we go, I'll stop and note some things that I was going to talk about. We have updates on the market share for streaming services. I want to talk about the ratings on Secret Invasion and this summer's Breakout show, which isn't even a news show. It's one that premiered on the USA Network many years ago called Suits. So we're going to cover all that, but in the interest of time, let's jump into the charts. We'll start as we always do with the most recent Amazon streaming charts. We're not going to go back into the historical records and look at everything week by week. We've got plenty of that. Let's look at what's hot right now on Amazon Prime Video. At number one is the Amazon original series, The Summer I Turned Pretty, which is the second season. We're going to start getting more Nielsen results from it soon, but indications are that it's doing quite well and it is really connecting with its intended audience. In second place is the new Amazon original series Shelter, based on the book series by Harlan Coben about a New Jersey teen and the intrigue at his new high school. Cocaine Bear, which is currently streaming on Amazon Prime Video if you're a subscriber, is in third place, followed by The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart, which is an Australian series starring Sigourney Weaver. At number 5 is Red, White, and Royal Blue, the Amazon original movie that debuted last week. It's based on a 2019 novel of the same name. As far as social media goes, it seems like it's been a pretty big hit. We'll see where it lands on the Nielsen charts in a couple of weeks. In third place is The Chosen Season 3, which is produced from Angel Studios, who also released Sound of Freedom in theaters, so they're all over the charts this summer. In seventh place, the Amazon original series Jack Ryan, which is wrapping up its run. At number 8 is Good Omens 2, the long-awaited second season of that show. M. Night Shyamalan's latest Knock at the Cabin is at number 9. And at number 10 is Jury Duty, one of the surprise hits of the summer. It was originally on Freevee, which is Amazon's free streaming service. I think it was originally IMDb TV. It's now kind of prestige television, though. It's gotten nominated for multiple Emmys. It's one of the few TV series this summer that I have actually sat down and watched, and it is really funny. If you haven't seen Jury Duty, I don't think I even want to spoil the premise of it for you. It's just a really good time, and it's a pretty quick watch as well. Amazon Prime Video has had a pretty good summer as far as original programming, and it ties into something that I was going to center a whole show around, which is the market share. There are numbers that are released by Just Watch as far as what is the streaming market share for each specific streaming service. And this isn't based on viewership. That's something very key that I have to note here. It's based on the interest that Just Watch sees in the different programming on these different streaming services. If you don't know what Just Watch is, it's a website. You can put in a show name or a movie name and it'll show you where they're streaming, and so they can kind of gauge what people are searching for, what they want to look at. And these were the changes I tracked from their reports going back to the fourth quarter of 2020 to the second quarter of 2023, which was the latest report released. And you'll see back in 2020 when I start this chart that Netflix had basically a 31% market share by Just Watch's metrics to Prime Video's 22% market share. Prime Video really hasn't risen that much. It's gone from 22 to 21%, but look at Netflix's share. It was at 31%. It's now at 20%, actually second behind Prime Video, less than 3 years after this chart began. And I think what this shows is what we've seen in these streaming wars so far, which is it's not necessarily that Prime Video has gained ground. It's that there's so much competition now that Netflix is no longer the undisputed king. It is just one of many streaming services that are out there scrapping. Really, the only one that improved its standing significantly from 2020 was what was then called HBO Max and is now currently Max. It was at a 9% share back at the fourth quarter of 2020. The latest results have it basically in third place at a 15% share. Hulu has fallen from 14% to 11%. Disney has stayed flat at 13%. And then you see Apple TV Plus going from 3% to 6%. Paramount Plus going from 3% to 7%, but they really are the also-rans. You can really see what the tiers are here, which is Netflix and Prime Video on top, Hulu, Disney Plus, and Max basically in the middle, and then everybody else kind of competing for their single-digit slice of the pie down at the bottom. So this is a really interesting thing that I wanted to bring up because it's not based on viewership, like I said, but it does show where audience interest is going. And yeah, I mean, Netflix really is, and you know, the goal was to take the fight to Netflix. That's happened, and now they are scrapping along with everybody else to be on top of that streaming race. They have a huge advantage, and really with Prime Video, the question is always, well, how many of the users actually have it because they want to watch the programming that's on Prime Video, and how many people have it because they have Amazon Prime? That's why I don't think that subscriber numbers are necessarily big, and that's why I like Just Watch's metrics. They may be a little harder to track, but audience interest, I think, is a very important component. Let's look at what's moving right now on the iTunes store. This was as of yesterday, August 19th. At number 1 is No Hard Feelings, which just wrapped its theatrical run. It's now available for purchase on the iTunes store. Elemental is also available for purchase. It's in second place. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, also available for purchase in third place. John Wick Chapter 4, available for purchase and rentals in fourth place. Kandahar is in fifth place. Sisu is in sixth place. The Super Mario Brothers movie, actually still in theaters, but also in seventh place on this chart. The low-budget horror film Cobweb is in eighth place, followed by The Little Mermaid, available for purchase only, in ninth place, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, available for purchase only, in 10th place. And 3 of those movies, Elemental, Little Mermaid, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, those will all be on Disney Plus fairly soon, but you can see that they're also already doing some video-on-demand numbers, and this is how Disney is going to try to weather the storm with so many box office disappointments this summer. All right, let's jump into the Netflix numbers. And like I said, we have about a 2-month backlog to get through. So I'm going to try to not really, skip over important information, but try to get through these as quickly as I can. We're going to go back first to the week of June 19th through the 25th, when Extraction 2 was the top rated program on Netflix with 42.38 million views. In second place was the debut of the sequel Through My Window Across the Sea, which was a follow-up to the Spanish streaming hit from last year. Take Care of Maya debuted in fifth place that week. It was a documentary about a girl's battle with a rare disease and her family's struggle as she tries to get care. In sixth place was the debut of The Perfect Find, a romance starring Gabrielle Union and Keith Powers. Make Me Believe debuted in seventh place, a Turkish film about matchmaking grandmothers. In ninth place was the debut of the Clint Eastwood film The Mule, which has way more threesomes in it than you would expect. And in 10th place was the series The Surrogacy Season 1. It's a series from Mexico about a woman who bears a child for a wealthy family and then has to understand the consequences of that decision. Moving on to the next week, June 26th through July 2nd, that was the debut of the first part of The Witcher Season 3, which logged 73 million hours watched and 15.18 million views. It's good enough there for second place, although when you look at the numbers, it is a substantial drop-off from the debut of Season 2. However, this was only 5 episodes versus the 8 episodes, the full run of Season 2 that debuted. But even given that, the numbers have really declined, even season over season, from 1 to 2 and now from 2 to 3 for The Witcher. And of course, with the change in Henry Cavill leaving the show now, it's going to be interesting to see what the path forward for that show is. At one point, it was one of Netflix's most popular shows. The original film Run Rabbit Run, which Netflix acquired out of the Sundance Film Festival, debuted at 6th place on the week of June 26th with 8.45 million views. And then in 9th place was the debut of the South African film I Number, Josie Gold, which was a police film. Jumping forward to the next week, the week of July 4th here in the U.S., July 3rd through the 9th, The Outlaws, which was an original Netflix movie, debuted that week to 31.7 million hours watched and 19.69 million views. It was not popular critically, but it was popular with audiences. Kind of a criminal meet the parents type film starring Pierce Brosnan and Ellen Barkin. The Lincoln Lawyer Season 2, also split into 2 parts, had its debut for the first part of its second season in 4th place with 7.42 million views. Nimona was a film that was left without a home when Blue Sky Studios shut down after the Disney-Fox merger. Netflix took up distribution and promotion, and it debuted to 6.73 million views in 5th place on the week of July 3rd. Unknown, The Last Pyramid, an archaeological documentary, debuted in 7th place. In 8th place was Celebrity Season 1, putting the spotlight yet again on more South Korean movies and TV shows on Netflix, and perhaps more to come. In 9th place is one of those movies that just pops up for whatever reason, Sniper Assassin's End, with 5.38 million views, the 8th film in the Sniper series. It was originally released back in 2020. And in 10th place was the debut of season 1 of Fatal Seduction, which is a series out of South Africa. Looking now at the week of July 10th through the 16th, that saw the debut of Bird Box Barcelona, which was the spin-off film of Bird Box, which is a big Christmas time hit a few years ago on Netflix. 30.5 million hours watched and 16.4 million total views, although coming in well behind the second week of The Outlaws, which brought in 28.76 million views in week 2. The Lincoln Lawyer season 2 is in 3rd place. In 4th place, a film that came out earlier and part of the licensing deal with Sony and Netflix, 65, with 6.77 million views total. I didn't love that movie, but it's been popular on streaming. In 7th place this week was Gold Brick, a French working-class heist movie, also released under the name Cash. And in 8th place, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which has been popular across a few different streaming platforms this year and this summer. Of course, a breakout hit at the box office in the holiday season and going into the early days of 2023, 5.53 million views for Puss in Boots. Looking at the week of July 17th through the 23rd, Bird Box Barcelona takes over the top spot with just over 19 million views, and The Outlaws drops to second with 12.11 million views. In 3rd place was the debut of Unknown Cave of Bones, a doc trying to show that an ancient cave may have actually held the bones not of humans, but of some unknown ape-like species. Sure, why not? In 4th place was the debut of the Netflix original film They Cloned Tyrone, a great cast, positive critical reception, but not a breakout Netflix hit. Love Tactics 2 debuted in 6th place. This was a sequel to the original 2022 film from Turkey. In 7th place is a series called King the Land. King the Land is a South Korean series. Sounds a bit like Succession in the hotel industry. You're not going to see it on this chart here because it does what I used to do, which is adjust the hours watched for total views, meaning people that watch the entire program. King the Land has many, many episodes, many, many hours of programming. So the total views of everything aren't very high, but if I were to sort by hours watched, King the Land, I think, is one of Netflix's 10 most watched series by actual length, duration of watch of the year. And that's just a different way to view what people are watching. Are they finishing it, or are they just watching a lot of it? And we'll talk about Suits, which is a show that doesn't show up in these Netflix charts because people aren't finishing it, but man, are they watching a lot of it this summer. Sweet Magnolia Season 3 debuted on the week of the 17th in 8th place with 4.6 million views, and debuting in 9th place was The Deepest Breath with 4.59 million views, a documentary about free diving. Looks basically like the underwater version of Free Solo, which I love, so I've got to check this documentary out. Moving to the week of July 24th through July 30th, the #1 program on Netflix was a film called Hidden Strike. 22 million hours watched, 12.82 million views. However, this is not a Netflix original film. It's also known as Project Extraction, and it stars Jackie Chan and John Cena. The movie was actually filmed 5 years ago and is just now hitting Netflix. And that's because Netflix is the licensed distributor for Hidden Strike, which continues to be popular licensing in general across all streaming services. In 2nd place is Miraculous, Ladybug, and Cat Noir, a French animated film based on the 2015 series. Debuting in 4th place was the Netflix original film Happiness for Beginners, starring Ellie Kemper, a rom-com there. In 5th place, Paradise, a German film about a man whose wife sells 4 decades of her life in order to pay off a debt. He then tries to get them back. That sounds like some pretty cool sci-fi. Maybe I'll check that one out as well. In 6th place was The Witcher Season 3, returning for the second part of its 3rd season with 59 million hours watched and total views of 7.76 million. It does bump down the chart a little bit because you added a bunch of watch time when you add those 3 additional episodes. In 7th place was Missing, the Lucy Blackman case, a true crime doc about a British tourist missing in Japan in the early 2000s. Syntonia Season 4 debuted in 8th place. This is an imported crime drama from Brazil. And then wrapping out the top 10 was Baki Hanma Season 2, a Japanese anime series. Wrapping out July, the week of July 31st through August 6th, Hidden Strike remained the most watched program on Netflix with 23.6 million views. Soul Catcher debuted in 5th place. This is a Netflix original film, a Polish movie about a weapon that turns people into murderers. A Perfect Story debuts on the charts in 6th place. This is a limited series out of Spain about a woman who runs away from her own wedding and the man that she meets after. In 7th place, returning with the second part of its second second season is The Lincoln Lawyer Season 2 with 6.75 million views. In 8th place, Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead. It has to be noted this is the live action adaptation of the anime, not the actual anime series, which is also charting on Netflix. It's about a man who feels liberated by the zombie apocalypse. And in 9th place, the popular teen drama series Heartstopper Season 2, which debuted with just over 6 million views. And now looking at the most recent Netflix chart, the week of August 7th through the 13th. In first place was the debut of Gal Gadot's Heart of Stone, easily taking the top spot with 33.1 million views total. And remember, this is worldwide. Hidden Strike bumps down to second place. In third place was the documentary Untold Johnny Football about quarterback Johnny Manziel with 7.67 million views. Painkiller, a Netflix series about the opioid epidemic, rounds out the top 5 with 7.2 million views. And the only other new entry in the top 10 was the film What Men Want in 7th place with 5.98 million views. Looking at the most watched 2023 Netflix programs year to date, we have some changes because it's been a couple weeks since we updated this chart. First of all, Extraction 2 really debuts on this chart at number 2 because of how well it did in its initial run, and it was giving The Mother a run for its money. We'll see how it continues to put up those numbers through the next few weeks. Right now, it has 123.74 million total views, which is about 12 million behind where The Mother is right now. Murder Mystery 2, The Night Agent Season 1, and Luther the Fallen Son all bump down, as do Queen Charlotte, You People, and Your Place or Mine. The Outlaws debuts in 9th place with 66 million total views, bumping Ginny and Georgia down to number 10, and then dropping off of this chart altogether are AKA, and then Wednesday Season 1, keeping in mind this was just the amount of watch time that Wednesday generated in calendar year 2023, not counting all of the watch time it accumulated in 2022. The Mother, starring Jennifer Lopez, has now officially entered the most watched Netflix films since Netflix started reporting this data back in June of 2021. It actually has generated more views than Glass Onion. It's at 136.36 million views with a lot of room to grow. We could be looking at it as high as number 6 by next week. Purple Hearts drops off of the top 10 for overall Netflix films. And then the other big mover was the first Extraction film. The bump in viewership that was generated from Extraction 2 was able to get it all the way up to number 3. Red Notice and Don't Look Up are still the top watched Netflix films since data started being reported back in 2021. Looking at the most viewed Netflix programs overall since 2021, Extraction is now up to 5th place all time. Squid Game Season 1 is at number 1, and Wednesday Season 1 is at number 2. Red Notice is at 3. Don't Look Up is at 4. Extraction we see there at number 5. Then we have The Adam Project, the first Bird Box movie, Stranger Things 4, The Gray Man, and We Can Be Heroes. Glass Onion now out of the overall top 10, keeping in mind this is all Netflix programming, movies, and series since June 28th, 2021. We have many, many more streaming charts to look at, but before we do, I want to thank the sponsors for this week's episode. This episode is brought to you by Babbel, and the best way to learn a language is through immersion, living where that language is spoken natively and using it every day. But that's not possible for everybody. So what's the second best way? Well, that would be Babbel, because with Babbel, you can start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Now, you could pay hundreds of dollars for a private tutor or try other language apps that are pretty much just games, or you can give Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons a shot, which are designed by over 150 language experts. And these lessons aren't meant to make you sound like a student memorizing grammar from a textbook. Babbel's lessons are designed to allow you to sound like a native speaker of that language regardless of your skill level. I've been traveling before in countries where I don't know the language, and it's embarrassing to not know how to do basic things like ask for directions. But with Babbel, you can learn everything you need in Italian, Spanish, German, French, Portuguese, and so many more. Babbel has a wide range of learning experiences from casual to intense, which means that there's always a way to fit in a Babbel study session, from self-study app lessons to podcasts to live classes. Here's a special limited time deal for people watching and listening to the show to get you started right now. Get 55% off of your Babbel subscription, but only for people that watch the show at babbel.com/Dan. Get 55% off at babbel.com/Dan. That's spelled BABBEL.com/Dan. Rules and restrictions may apply. This show is brought to you by AG1, a daily nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. People are going back to school, the summer is winding down, but for a lot of folks, that means you are busier than ever, and you don't have time for that leisurely summer breakfast that you've been enjoying for the last few months. That also means it's the perfect time for AG1. I drink it every morning and it makes me feel like I'm covering my nutritional bases. Whether you're running out to class or you're traveling like I do a lot, the channel's always got me busy. Whatever your excuse is, it's important to keep things on track when it comes to things like your immune system, your gut health, and so much more. I've struggled in the past with keeping to a routine, but drinking AG1 is fast and as simple as making a breakfast drink in the morning. It's just 1 scoop of powder mixed with water once a day, and that's it. Each scoop is packed with 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. And I also have some great single serving AG1 travel packs, so I never have to miss a day, even when I'm on the go. With AG1, it's really that simple. If you want to take ownership of your health, try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs right now with your first purchase. Just go to drinkag1.com/Dan. That's drinkag1.com/Dan to check it out. Let's move on now to the Nielsen Charts, which track movies and shows not just on Netflix, but across all streaming services, or at least most streaming services. This is just in the United States, and there's a delay because we haven't done the show in a couple months, and on top of that, there's even more of a delay in the reporting of the numbers, so we're actually going back to May to talk about some of these results. Let's jump right into it. First of all, this is the week of May 29th to June 4th, the 10 most watched streaming movies. The Boss Baby was at the top of this list with 8.9 million hours watched. Really, the only 2 movies that were added were the surprise Oscar contender To Leslie at number 7, and then the comedy We're the Millers at number 8, both of those movies on Netflix. Looking at the most watched streaming shows from May 29th through June 4th, again, the same shows that were up on this chart last time we did the show, still on top. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Fubar at number 1 with 28.7 million hours watched, and then SWAT, which has been generating a lot of watch time this summer at 23.4 million hours. And then the last season of Ted Lasso has also done really well, 20.7 million total hours watched from May 29th to June 4th. Manifest returned to the Nielsen chart this week, as did Heartland. These are both shows that have been on and off the charts for many different weeks. Looking at the most watched streaming movies for June 5th through the 11th, this week saw the debut of Avatar: The Way of Water, which is available on both Disney Plus and Max. I talked about this a little bit in an earlier video last week because of a licensing deal that Disney did with HBO. The movie is available on 2 different streaming platforms simultaneously, and it had a great first week. 32.3 million hours watched easily by about 26 million hours, the most watched movie of the week. The Angry Birds movie debuted on the charts at number 4, and Disney Plus and Hulu's Flamin' Hot debuted at number 5 with 4.9 million hours watched. And then because it was the beginning of the month, we saw a bunch of new movies at number 6 through 10. Zookeeper on Netflix, Moana, as always, a perennial favorite on this chart on Disney Plus, Creed 3 streaming on Amazon, The Choice debuting on Netflix, and then Encanto on Disney Plus also returning to the chart. Looking at the most watched streaming shows June 5th through the 11th, it pretty much stayed the same. The only addition was the new season of Never Have I Ever on Netflix, which debuted with 15.2 million hours watched. Moving on to the next week, June 12th through the 18th, that was the week that Extraction 2 hit the charts, but Avatar: The Way of Water stayed on top, 17.6 million hours watched. Extraction 2 debuting with just over 17 million hours watched, so almost a tie there for first place. The original Extraction hitting the charts again at number 8 with 3.6 million hours watched, and then returning to the charts at number 10 was Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania on Disney Plus, not a runaway streaming success according to Nielsen, but a return to the charts with 2.6 million hours watched. Looking at the most watched shows for the week of June 12th through the 18th, that was the week that the newest season of Black Mirror debuted on Netflix, and it was the most watched program according to Nielsen with 22.6 million hours watched, edging out SWAT in second place with 20.2 million hours watched. Grey's Anatomy also jumping onto the chart with 8.5 million hours watched. Again, Grey's Anatomy always on and off this chart, one of the most popular shows across all streaming platforms. Of course, here in the US, it streams on Netflix. Moving now to June 19th through the 20th, Extraction 2 was able to take that top spot as far as streaming movies go with 17.2 million hours watched. Avatar: The Way of Water dropped down to 11.1 million hours for second place. In third place on Netflix was the film The Mule starring Clint Eastwood with just over 8 million hours watched. And again, just an uncomfortable amount of threesomes in that film. In fourth place, the documentary Take Care of Maya with 6.6 million hours watched, good enough for a top 5 debut there. The Perfect Find, 47 Ronin, and Unbroken, all films on Netflix that broke into the top 10 at number 7, number 8, and number 10. The most watched streaming shows for the week of June 19th through the 25th. This was the week that Suits first hit the charts with a vengeance, and there was no slow climb for Suits on the Nielsen streaming charts. The week of the 19th through the 25th of June, Suits put up 38.6 million hours watched, easily the most watched show. It's streaming on Peacock and Netflix. Netflix has seasons 1 through 8. Peacock has all 9 seasons. Black Mirror bumped down to second place with 25.8 million hours watched. Hulu's The Bear, also premiering that same week, a top 5 debut, 14.2 million hours watched. And then The Surrogacy on Netflix breaking into the top 10 with 9.7 million hours watched. But let's take a moment to address Suits, because over the next few minutes, as we look at the most watched streaming shows week to week, you're going to start seeing the unbelievable numbers that Suits has been putting up. And when I say unbelievable, I mean in the history, really, of the Nielsen streaming charts, which there have been charts going back to 2020 that I have an archive of, I can go back and look at. There are only 2 shows that have been able to draw viewership at the size and consistency that we've been seeing from Suits. One of them is Stranger Things, and the other one is Wednesday, which are huge, massive mega hits for Netflix, and also original series. Suits is really an uncharted territory, no pun intended, for a licensed program. In the last couple weeks, Suits has put up either close to a top 10 or a top 10 performance for any series, library, original, it doesn't matter, since this data was first published in 2020. There's really no explanation as to why Suits has become such a breakout hit. If you're not familiar with what Suits is, it's a legal drama that ran on the USA Network here in the United States from June 2011 to September 2019. It had good for cable ratings. Season 1 drew about 4 million viewers, but the show dipped to under 1 million viewers in its final season. Prior to its streaming resurgence, it was perhaps best known for featuring Meghan Markle as one of its cast members, who of course now is married to Prince Harry. She's the Duchess of Sussex. But there was no indication that this was going to be the summer of Suits on streaming. In a weird way, though, it ties into another huge phenomenon that we've seen on my other show, Charts with Dan, where I talk about the box office, which is what Barbie and Oppenheimer have been doing. And it may seem like those two things aren't really connected, but because of the strikes that have been going on right now, the actors and the writers both currently on strike, with the writers at the table. Hopefully they will be able to hammer out a deal soon. But the success of Barbie and Oppenheimer, in my opinion, and a lot of analysts have said the same way, only really underscored the value of the artists that were on strike, because the studios couldn't really say that they weren't making money off of movies when both of those movies, and particularly Barbie, were setting record numbers at the box office. And so it sort of bolstered the case of the actors and writers that are on the picket lines. Suits here, a very similar case. Suits is putting up all-time numbers, and yet you have people who wrote on that series that are saying, hey, here's the residual check that I got. It's for like $3,000. Meanwhile, Suits is putting up 30, 40, 50, 60 million hours of watch time per week, and it really only underscores the unfairness of the current residual system, especially when it comes to streaming. Performance-based residuals are a key component of the writer's strike. Actors are also asking for transparency and a reform of the residual system, and the success of Suits has put a spotlight on that. So these weird organic things that have happened, people going to see Barbie in the theaters, people watching Suits on streaming, have actually worked in favor of the writers and actors, because it's allowed them an example, a recent example that they can point to show why they're on strike and the value that they bring to the table. So let's continue to track Suits across these next couple weeks. Let's look at the week of June 26th through July 2nd. The movie chart stayed mostly the same. Run Rabbit Run debuted in third place in the US with 5.5 million hours watched. Megan returned to the streaming movie chart because it's streaming now on Prime Video with just over 3 million hours watched. And then The Boss Baby, another perennial favorite, returned to the chart at number 9. But look at what Suits did in its second week on this chart. June 26th through July 2nd, it put up 52.3 million hours of watch time. It more than doubled the second place show, which was The Witcher on Netflix with 21.8 million hours watched. That's usually easily a first place number. The Bear on Hulu also putting up strong numbers, 16.8 million hours watched in third place. Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime Video returning to the chart at number 7 with 12.9 million hours watched. And then The Big Bang Theory on Max, another show that you see on this chart off and on quite a bit, with 10 million hours watched. Going now to July 3rd through the 9th, that was the week that The Outlaws hit Netflix. It was the most watched film on streaming with 11.8 million hours watched. Sadly, because of tragic real-life events, there was an uptick in interest in the movie Titanic. It was in second place the week of July 3rd through the 9th with just over 7 million hours watched. 65 on Netflix was in third place with 6.1 million hours watched. White House Down debuted in fifth place with 4.4 million hours watched. Nimona debuted in sixth place with 4.3 million hours watched. And then Annihilation, one of my favorite recent sci-fi films, debuting in ninth place with just over 4 million hours watched on Netflix. When we go to the most watched shows, Suits keeps growing. 61.2 million hours watched in week 3 on the streaming charts. That's nearly triple what the second place show was, which was The Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix. It put up 23.4 million hours watched. The Witcher down there at number 3. The only other new show debuting was Is It Cake 2 on Netflix. It debuted in ninth place with 12.5 million hours watched. Looking at the most watched streaming movies for the next week, that would be July 10th through the 16th. The Outlaw stays at number 1, 65 moves up to number 2. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish debuts there, or actually returns to the chart at number 3 with 9.4 million hours watched. Bird Box Barcelona debuts at number 4 with 6.4 million hours watched. Then we had Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. Its debut on Paramount Plus put it just outside the top 5 at number 6 with just over 4 million hours watched. Captain Underpants debuting at number 7 with 3.5 million hours watched, and The Tutor on Netflix debuting in ninth place with 3.3 million hours watched. And then looking at the most watched streaming shows, Suits week 4 pretty much holding steady with the week before, 61.6 million hours watched. Bluey on Disney Plus, though, a strong second place. Bluey has really been growing in popularity. It is even easily now displacing or trouncing CoComelon, which was the undisputed kids show. Bluey, I think, has a lot more crossover appeal, which is why you're seeing it perform well. It also had new episodes that debuted this summer, but still, second place with 22.5 million hours watched. Netflix's Quarterback has a top 5 debut with 14.2 million hours watched, and speaking of CoComelon, it returned to the charts on the week of July 10th to the 16th in ninth place with 10.8 million hours watched. Moving on now to the week of July 17th through the 23rd, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish moves up to the most watched film on streaming. They cloned Tyrone on Netflix at 7.8 million hours watched, good enough for number 2. Unknown Cave of Bones debuts there in 5th place. Ride Along, a licensed film, debuts at 6th place with 4.6 million hours watched. And Encanto on Disney Plus returns at the number 10 spot. Usually if it's a slow week on streaming for movies, you can count on Encanto to return. Moana is in the top 10 pretty much every week. And then look at this. This is the most recent chart, by the way, that we have available from Nielsen for the week of July 17th to the 23rd. But Suits keeps growing, 64.6 million hours watched. So this wasn't just people watching it for 1 week. This is now a month of sustained, almost top 10 all-time viewership. Bluey in second place with 20.3 million. So you can see that Suits actually did more than triple the second place streaming show on this chart. Sweet Magnolias on Netflix almost took that number 2 spot. It was just about 16,000 hours short of having more watch time than Bluey. The rest of the top 10 list stays the same. And looking at watch time per available episode, I didn't do this for all the other weeks because there's only so much time in the day. Secret Invasion is a show that we haven't talked about. It's the new MCU show. When you look at watch time per available episode, it's actually number 1. This is through 5 episodes. It's putting up 1.37 million hours watched per episode. That's only just barely good enough for number 1. It was actually number 2 in the week before. Netflix's Quarterback is at 1.35 million hours watched per episode. The Lincoln Lawyer in second place with 780,000 hours watched per episode. The Summer I Turned Pretty at number 4 with 746,000 hours watched per episode. Then Sweet Magnolias in 5th place. But this just goes to show you how well Suits is doing. Shows that have a lot of episodes generally don't show up on this chart because you're dividing that watch time by a lot more each week. The more episodes there are, the more that this watch time per episode is kind of diluted down. But even though there's 136 episodes, Suits is still good enough for 6th place on this chart. Every single episode of Suits was generating 475,000 hours watched each on average. That's pretty crazy. Cocomelon, Jack Ryan, The Witcher, and The Bear round out the top 10 there. But let's talk a little bit about Secret Invasion. I'm working on my own video, not necessarily a review, more of an essay, but also giving my thoughts on the show that'll be out at some point in the next, I don't know, sometime in the future. But this is a show that, of course, is adapting a very popular, very successful comic book storyline. Many people thought that Secret Invasion would be perhaps an entire phase of the MCU. So it was a little bit surprising when Marvel announced that it was going to be a Disney Plus show. However, if they could pull it off, then perhaps this would just be another way to tell this story. But through 5 episodes, Secret Invasion is not putting up the kind of numbers you would expect for a storyline that is so significant and so revered among comic book readers. First of all, these are the Disney Plus MCU TV series by total watch time in millions of hours. Now, of course, Secret Invasion is going to be a little bit of a disadvantage because this is only through 5 episodes, but that also means there's only one new episode left to hit the charts. And right now, it is only beating Ms. Marvel and What If as far as total viewership. It is about 17 million hours shy of the total watch time for She-Hulk. She-Hulk did have more episodes, but it was also a shorter show, and really well short of shows like Moon Knight, Hawkeye, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and then Loki. Loki has so far the most total watch time as far as reported hours on Nielsen, at 96.6 million hours. That's just for season 1. WandaVision in second place with 90 million hours. So Secret Invasion not putting up the numbers that you expect from these prestige MCU shows on Disney Plus, the ones that really were consequential to the MCU and had people buzzing. Looking at hours watched per episode, so it's sort of like the chart we were looking at before, where I take the total runtime and divide it by how many episodes were released. Secret Invasion fares a little better. It's doing better as far as watch time per episode than She-Hulk did. She-Hulk averaged about 5.8 million hours of watch time per episode. Secret Invasion is averaging about 7 million hours of watch time per episode. But again, that's well short of WandaVision, which had 10 million hours of watch time per episode. Moon Knight, Hawkeye, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, all ahead of that. And then Loki Season 1, which averaged 16.1 million hours watched per episode. So again, Secret Invasion near the bottom of the MCU as far as total watch time, near the bottom of the MCU on Disney Plus as far as watch time per episode. And then looking at hours watched through 5 episodes. So this is each of these shows runs through the first 5 episodes that were aired. Again, so that you're not comparing a partial run versus a full run. Loki Season 1 had already put up 70.3 million hours of watch time through its first 5 episodes. Hawkeye, surprisingly, was in second place with 57.6 million hours of watch time, followed by The Falcon and the Winter Soldier at 55.9 million, Moon Knight at 49.58 million, WandaVision at 40.4 million hours watched through 5 episodes. A lot of people might be surprised by that, but when you look at the numbers for WandaVision, they were heavily backloaded. WandaVision was actually a very popular show. You could see that when we looked at total watch time, but people were watching it later on in its run. I think it's probably because it was the first MCU show, so people may not have been watching the first few weeks, but they were tuning in toward the end. We're not seeing that kind of pattern developing here with Secret Invasion. Right now, through 5 episodes, Secret Invasion is trailing every MCU series on Disney Plus other than She-Hulk, What If, and then Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel, we don't even have complete ratings data for. It didn't even make the chart for many of its weeks. It was easily, sadly, the least watched MCU show. But again, this is a very mediocre performance, in my opinion, for Secret Invasion, and certainly not worthy of the storyline that it is adapting. So this is something to keep an eye on. Let's see what happens with Loki Season 2, which is debuting soon in the fall. If it's able to put up numbers that are similar to Loki Season 1, or even, 2/3 of Loki Season 1, then it may just be that people aren't connecting to this specific series. But if Loki's numbers drop more substantially, or even puts up similar numbers to Secret Invasion, then we could be seeing a sharp decline for Disney overall when it comes to Marvel shows on Disney Plus. Something to watch for. The box office results haven't been stellar for some of the MCU movies recently. Some of the movies have been hits, some of them not so much. And now it seems like the TV shows are losing a bit of luster as well. Given that Marvel is one of Disney's crown jewels, I'm sure that's not the news that they want at this point in time. These are the most watched streaming movies for 2023 through July 23rd, which is when we have data. And again, this is a big update because it's been a couple months since we looked at this chart. Avatar: The Way of Water is now the second most watched streaming movie of the year. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever was number one last time we looked at this chart, but the movie that's actually taken over the number one spot, and again, just by consistently being in the top 10 every week, is Moana. Moana so far has generated 88.3 million hours of watch time, a substantial lead over Avatar: The Way of Water and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And again, more evidence that yes, original movies, original shows are an important aspect of streaming services, but library content, licensed content as well, is really leading the way in many cases. Suits right now on Netflix, Moana, the most watched show on streaming this year so far. You People drops down to number 4, and Encanto enters the top 10 for the year at number 5. A Man Called Otto, The Mother, and Minions: The Rise of Gru all drop down on the chart. Extraction 2 debuts at number 9 as the 9th most watched streaming film of the year. And Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. It was on Peacock earlier this year. It's now streaming on Netflix. It debuts at number 10. Luther the Fallen Son, Your Place or Mine, and Murder Mystery 2 all drop off of the chart for the year so far. Looking at the most watched original streaming series for 2023, again, these are series that are made specifically for streaming services or that debut exclusively on streaming services here in the US. Bluey has actually, I never thought this was possible, displaced Coco Melon. Now, some people say, well, Bluey's not an original streaming series. Here in the US, at least right now, maybe not historically, but right now, Bluey debuts new episodes on Disney Plus exclusively. So this is why I have Bluey as an original streaming series, and it has now put up more hours watched than Coco Melon. I mean, this really is a changing of the guard. 361.3 million hours watched versus Coco Melon's 350 million hours watched. Ted Lasso is the third most watched original streaming series of the year, although a steep drop-off from Bluey and Coco Melon. It's at 181.3 million hours watched. Ginny and Georgia and The Night Agent all taking a drop, but still in the top 5. You, The Last of Us, Outer Banks, The Mandalorian, and Love is Blind rounding out the top 10. Looking at the most watched library streaming series, and you can see that just in the last few weeks, Suits has made a lot of noise on this chart. NCIS right now, the most watched library streaming series of the year and the most watched series of the year overall at 367.8 million hours watched. But in just a month, Suits is now in second place with 278.5 million hours watched. And if it keeps putting up weeks like we've been seeing, that it will be at number 1 within 2 or 3 weeks, displacing NCIS. Grey's Anatomy falls to number 3. The Big Bang Theory falls to number 4. I mentioned that SWAT has been generating a lot of watch time the last few weeks. It's now at number 5 as far as most watched library series. The Walking Dead is at 6. South Park is at 7. New Amsterdam's at 8. Heartland is at number 9. Gilmore Girls drops to number 10. And we lose Shameless, Supernatural, and Friends from this list. Suits has not yet cracked the most watched library streaming series overall since 2020 when we started collecting data, although it is close, I can tell you. The top 5 remains unchanged. Really, the only things that have changed are in that 6 through 10 area. The Big Bang Theory moves up to number 7. The Office and Schitt's Creek both dropping one spot to numbers 8 and 9. We'll see if there is any threat to these shows once Suits keeps doing what it's doing, but no big changes in that top 10 right now. Looking at the most watched original streaming series since 2020, again, no new additions, just shows that have shifted around. Coco Melon remains overall the most watched original streaming series over the past 3 years with 1.5 billion hours watched. That's nearly double number 2, so it's not going anywhere for a while. Ozark's in second place, Stranger Things in third, Bluey in fourth. Manifest moves up to 5th place. Cobra Kai and The Crown both dropping down a spot. They're at numbers 6 and 7. And that does it for a very extensive episode of Streaming Charts with Dan. I am going to try not to let it be 2 months before I do another one of these episodes, but it's just so hard because I'll prep a show and it'll get pushed back, and there's so much going on. But I really do want to keep track of Suits and how it's doing a little bit closer to real time, especially since we do get some of those delays with the Nielsen numbers anyway. Looking generally at some things that are premiering in the next, let's say, week and a half or so through the the end of the month. Just a selection of things you can find on different streaming services. Star Wars Ahsoka, the latest live-action Disney Star Wars series, will also be debuting on Tuesday on Disney+. Then on Friday, Vacation Friends 2, the sequel to Vacation Friends, naturally, debuts on Hulu. Also this upcoming Friday, the Adam Sandler produced film You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah will be debuting on Netflix. Next Wednesday, August 30th, we'll see the debut of the final season of Archer on FX. And then next Thursday, August 31st on Netflix, will be the premiere of the live-action adaptation of the anime series One Piece. Netflix has not had a great track record with live-action anime adaptations. Let's see if this changes their luck. And that does it for Streaming Charts with Dan. Thank you so much for watching. Charts with Dan, my box office show, will be coming out, I think, tomorrow on Monday because of some travel that I have planned. If not, for some reason, then it will definitely be out on Tuesday. And then I've got movie news and reviews and all that stuff planned for the rest of this week and beyond. You never know what you're going to see here on the channel. Thanks so much for spending part of your day here with me, talking about numbers and suits and secret invasions and all that stuff. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.